rocket propulsion. In the 1st century AD, nearly 2,000 years before the Industrial Revolution, a Greek mathematician and engineer named Hero created a steam-powered engine he called an aeolipile.
One of the great inventors of the ancient world was the famous Hero of Alexandria. He invented all kinds of stuff. He actually invented what we would describe as a rocket-type motor. And really, something like this is the beginnings of rocket technology. And we don't know where Hero got many of his ideas, but it may well have come from aliens.
Founder of Tyndall Vision Laboratories, demonstrates a small-scale replica of Hero's aeolipile.
Now, conventional steam engine that we think of has pistons that get its power, but aeolipile uses these opposing jets. So it's creating thrust, and rather than thrust in like a rocket, we use it in a linear fashion. This is causing a rotational effect, and there's your steam turbine, really, working off the thrust. Now, this is operating much as it did in the 1st century AD. This is generally considered to be the first working steam engine. It works more like a turbine than a classic steam engine with pistons. But it's very significant because it really is taking a compressed gas and turning it into energy. Wow! That has a lot of energy. Steam!
The name for Hero's steam rocket engine, aeolipile, translates to the ball of Aeolus. In Greek mythology, Aeolus was the god of the winds. Is it possible that Hero drew inspiration for his invention from the stories of the gods, such as those found in Homer's The Odyssey? Or might he have had help from the gods themselves?
Some have suggested that it was alien intervention, that aliens taught him how to build this machine. However, I'm leaning more towards the idea that he looked at older texts from previous generations and that the source of the idea of how to build this did come from extraterrestrials, but from way before he was alive, and he just came across those texts.
But do the descriptions of rockets and otherworldly devices found in ancient texts and legends provide evidence of extraterrestrial encounters in the distant past? Perhaps the answer will be discovered in an unlikely place, in the hands of the U.S. military. May 2010, off the coast of California. A powerful new weapon shoots down unmanned aerial drones during secret testing carried out by the U.S. Navy. Firing from a warship at a distance of nearly 2 miles, a ray of intense laser energy burns through targets traveling at speeds of more than 300 miles per hour. But is it possible that such so-called death rays could have been used before, perhaps in ancient times?
I'm quite convinced that there have been in the past advanced civilizations on Earth that did have such things as the so-called death ray. Whether it was used as a weapon or whether it was just observed being used is a very, very open question.
In 214 BC, Greeks living in the Sicilian city of Syracuse prepared for an attack by a fleet of Roman warships. Though outnumbered by a superior military force, ancient texts suggest that Syracuse was well defended by a mysterious and powerful new weapon.
Probably the most famous ancient death ray was the one that was built by the Greek inventor Archimedes. He was able to create this giant mirror and parabolic disc and focus the sun's rays on the fleet and set these ships on fire. So here we have what would be a primitive kind of death ray that really worked.
But how could Archimedes have conceived such a formidable weapon, one far in advance of any known at the time? Researchers suggest the inventor may have drawn inspiration from Greek myths written nearly 600 years before the Battle of Syracuse. Myths that told the stories of gods that brandished cosmic weapons of incredible destructive force.
If you look in the Greek tradition, they have a very clear description of Zeus's thunderbolt, which he was able to point at people or at other things that he wanted to explode, hit the button, and what they described as lightning would come out and create a fierce and terrible explosion.
When these ancient gods, like Zeus, were to come down from the sky in this flurry of thunder and lightning and then get out of their spacecraft, they were perceived as gods. These ancient aliens had fantastic technology available to them. Technology that would have seemed like magic to our primitive ancestors. So when these people came down from the sky and they had advanced energy weapons, they were like gods to our ancient ancestors.
It doesn't matter where you go, but the gods were always able to create thunder, create lightning in a controlled way. In ancient India, we have the gods holding the dorjes sometimes like this, and it looks as if some type of a directed energy beam comes directly out of the front to vanquish the enemy, to destroy him, to incinerate him.
But if death ray type weapons had been used in ancient times, might there be some sort of tangible proof? Perhaps there is. Here, scattered throughout the Scottish countryside, can be found numerous ancient ruins. Many appear to have been forts or other enclosures, dating back thousands of years. Remarkably, they also appear to have been subjected to fire and heat, so intense it practically turned the stone structures into glass. It's a process more scientifically known as vitrification.
Here you have these stone buildings in which an analysis of the outside comes to the conclusion that they were heated to over 1,000 degrees Celsius in temperature. Conventional fire could not have reached this heat. You needed a sustained burn at 1,000 degrees Celsius for a long period of time. Why is it that it's only these forts that have this type of charring where they're actually glazed like pottery on the outside? Why is it that you don't see it on the stones in the surrounding area? And even more interestingly, why is it that so many of them are concentrated in this one little area in northern Scotland? I believe this is very clear evidence of death rays being used.
According to Celtic legend, there once was a god named Lu, also known as the Shining One, the sun god, and the god of war. Like the Greek god Zeus, Lu was said to wield a mighty magic spear, not unlike the thunderbolts of his Greek counterpart.
We have many stories of divinities who were powerful figures who had weapons that seemed extraordinary for their time. One was the great Celtic divinity Lu, who had a spear that could spit fire and lightning and do great damage. It was an extraordinary weapon. We don't have a great deal of detail about it, but it clearly could dominate any situation he got into.
When battle was near, Lu would draw out his spear, and it roared, and then flashes of fire came out of it, and it tore through the ranks of the enemy, never tired of killing and slaying. It was one amazing weapon. I mean, how else can we explain all those numerous vitrified forts where the surface of the stone is as smooth as glass? And these spots can only be found in very concentrated areas through northern Scotland.
Is it possible that what the Celtic legends are describing as Lu is in fact an alien general or other kind of extraterrestrial leader in possession of a devastating weapon.
All these descriptions of sophisticated weaponry sounds almost like science fiction. But is it really? Because we have those weapons today. And I think it is merely a reinvention of history. That all the stuff that we have today has been around before, and that our past is not science fiction, but science fact.
Deadly laser beams, acoustic levitation, anti-gravity. Could these be technologies that were witnessed and even used by ancient civilizations? If so, were they conceived in the minds of early man? Or did they have different, perhaps otherworldly origins? Might unlocking the secrets of these inventions be the key to discovering our ancient past? Or by rediscovering lost technology, might we clear the path to our own future and to the limitless potential of the universe beyond? Winged creatures carrying messages from the heavens. Unearthly guardians entrusted to both observe and protect. Powerful warriors bringing about everything from plague to peace. But are angels merely the product of mankind's imagination? Or do they really exist? If so, where do they come from?
When angels appear, they begin to do things that defy our laws of physics.
I don't think they actually had wings. It was ancient man's way of saying they had the power of flight.
Are angels really supernatural beings from heaven? Or something more?
It's essentially a misinterpreted flesh and blood extraterrestrial who visited Earth a long, long time ago.
Millions of people around the world believe we have been visited in the past by extraterrestrial beings. What if it were true? Did ancient aliens really help to shape our history? If so, might angels really be travelers visiting the Earth from distant planets? Angels. According to a Nielsen survey taken in 2010, nearly 7% of Americans believe in their existence. But what are they? Winged visitors from God as depicted in the Bible? Smiling cherubs who peer down at us from billowing clouds? Or something much, much more?
The concept of angels is obviously very widespread, in certainly American culture. And you find it in Latin culture, Greek culture, Babylonian culture.
When we think of angels, we immediately think to the Bible. But when you go onto the internet, when you read books, you will find that people have visitations of angels every single day.
In the Hebrew Bible's book of Genesis, angels first appear as divine beings, sent to earth as messengers of God.
They wanted to have God interacting with the human beings, but it seems somewhat undignified to have God directly operating, and so he sent messengers.
The word angel is a mistranslation. In Hebrew, the word for angel is malach. However, the correct translation is not angel at all, but it is in fact messenger. In Greek, the word angelos is not angel. It is intermediary, middleman. And so what do we have in these stories? We have these intermediaries, these messengers, bringing information from quote-unquote God.
By definition, angels are otherworldly. Angels are extraterrestrial. They're not from this planet. So really, by definition, ETs and angels are the same. Now, our modern conception of ETs have changed, but go back thousands and thousands of years when angels lived among our biblical ancestors. They didn't call them ETs, they called them angels, but they knew they were not of this world, not of this planet.
But could some of these so-called messengers of God have served another function? One not so benevolent or benign. According to the book of Enoch, the so-called lost biblical text that was rediscovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls in the late 1940s, the first angels to arrive on Earth were the fallen angels.
It was on Mount Hermon that angels came down from the heavens, fallen angels to inhabit Earth. They were trying to assume power, and because of that, they were cast out from heaven and cast down to Earth.
Now, to me, this sounds more of a mutiny story, where extraterrestrials arrived here, and there was a type of rift, and so they split into two different factions. And the faction that split off is what today is referred to as the fallen angels.
Enoch was a believer in angels, fallen angels, visitations, but everything he put in his scriptures seemed to apply, to me, extraterrestrial visitation. From craft that he saw, to mountainsides that they would land, to them taking him around and telling him things.
Both in the book of Enoch and in the Hebrew Bible, the fallen angels entered into opposition to God's will by interbreeding with humans.
In Genesis 6, it talks about the sons of God's plural, mating with the daughters of men, and there with a certain evil connotation to it.
How can angels have sex? Enoch describes of it. Some of the extraterrestrials stood on Earth. They had sex with some of our girls. That is what is written down in Enoch. It's not my invention. Enoch never calls them gods. He calls them guardian of the skies or watchmen.
According to ancient texts, the fallen angels not only physically mated with the women of Earth, they produced offspring. The Nephilim, a race of giants, similar to those portrayed in the story of David and Goliath. But ancient astronaut theorists suggest the use of the term giants is misleading. They theorize that the term refers not to the Nephilim's physical size, but to their almost superhuman ability.
Were they giants? Or is that the wrong word and the correct word should be extraterrestrial? Because then, in my opinion, it makes more sense because so far I have not seen an original fossil of a giant bone.
But if, as many ancient astronaut theorists believe, fallen angels were really extraterrestrials that first arrived in the Middle East, wouldn't they have also appeared elsewhere in the world? For proof, researchers point to thousands of carvings and other depictions of winged guardians, strange creatures, and other half-man and half-beasts that commonly appear on ancient walls and artifacts.
There is such an enormous amount of evidence to suggest that angels are not something which Christianity invented, but that they were somehow physically present in all civilizations.
Ancient cultures that depicted the gods as winged creatures are the Sumerians, the Babylonians, certainly the Egyptians. All of these civilizations had symbols where there may have been a winged disc, or there may have been what we would call today probably a UFO. I believe they were just letting us know that these beings flew.
In the Middle East in particular, there were depictions of supernatural beings with wings. The demons of Mesopotamia, the Zuzu, which had the head of a lion and the body of a human and the wings of a locust. They were primarily soldiers of the higher gods, servants of the higher gods. The higher gods depended on these messengers. They would run back and forth and gather information.
The Bible may be the most thoroughly documented account of extraterrestrial contact ever in written history here on Earth. We just simply have not learned how to interpret and how to identify the clear and obvious evidence that the seraphim, the cherubim, the archangels, the angels, all of these different hierarchies of beings described in the Old and the New Testament literally do refer to visitors who come here.
Use a word extraterrestrials instead of the word of angel. Use a word of a leader of extraterrestrials instead of archangel. If you change a few words in the old text, a few keywords, you change the sense of the old text. It's all not coincidence, it was on purpose. It's time to wake up, to see these things with modern eyes.
But if, as ancient astronaut theorists maintain, angels are not ethereal winged beings, but actually flesh and blood creatures visiting us from other planets, why are they here? And if they are messengers, just who or what do they represent? Mount Sodom, Israel. A pillar of rock salt known as Lot's wife overlooks the southwestern part of the Dead Sea, near the presumed location of the biblical cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. In both the Hebrew book of Genesis and the Islamic Quran, angels traveled to this spot to warn Abraham's nephew Lot that God was about to unleash terror upon the world.
And the angel finally says to Lot, if you don't come now with your family, 2 girls and a wife, I cannot help you anymore. It looks as if a countdown was working, but it could not be stopped anymore. If even the angel cannot stop it.
Sure enough, they walk away, and there's this mayhem and destruction. His wife turns around, and she turns into a pillar of salt. Since the ancient astronaut theory proposes that angels were nothing else but misinterpreted flesh and blood extraterrestrials, this means that extraterrestrials did side with certain people. Were angels or extraterrestrials interfering with human development?
But if angels save Lot and his family from the wrath of God, is this proof that angels are more than just otherworldly messengers? Might they be more actively engaged in helping their human counterparts, even to the extent that they might still be affecting the outcome of human history? Once again, ancient astronaut theorists look to the Book of Enoch for their answer, and claim to have found evidence in its references to a race of fallen angels known as Watchers.
There's much debate amongst religious scholars about the fallen angels. Some say they were deliberately sent here to watch over man. And in the Book of Enoch specifically, we have 20 watchers which are sort of in charge of all the other angels that are in Enoch's presence. You have the commanders and the officers and the lieutenants, and those 20 deliberately teach Enoch in various disciplines, such as meteorology, astronomy, how to make better swords. Now, would something like this really happen in the kingdom of God? I think the answer is clear.
Where did they come from? What do they want? And if we're dealing with one or more intelligences, that maybe they have different agendas, but maybe there is something out there that has been an ally to evolving hominids, and we're the latest model.
In the Bible, angels often appear to humans as physical entities that can be seen, heard, and even touched. But today, many people believe angels are present, whether they can see them or not. According to a 2008 survey by Baylor University's Institute for Studies of Religion, 55% of all American adults believe a guardian angel protects them.
The popularity of guardian angels in modern culture, I think, has to do with the idea that we want some kind of supernatural protection in a world where we don't really feel very safe oftentimes.
The Islamic faith teaches that every human being has not one, but two guardian angels, one for each shoulder. These celestial beings are called writing angels because they write down the good deeds and the bad deeds in each person's life. The first so-called guardian angel to appear in Judeo-Christian texts is the angel Raphael, who was featured in the book of Tobit, written sometime between the 8th and 2nd century BC.
Tobit is off on a very difficult mission. He's going to go to Persia to find a wife. And he runs into all sorts of problems on the way. So God sends the angel Raphael. And now we have the angel not just as a messenger from God, he becomes a guardian angel. He becomes a special protector.
The idea of guardian angel is it just because we wish it? We believe it, that somebody is protecting us, or does it come from the past? Has it to do maybe something with extraterrestrial? In the sense that some extraterrestrial said to some human, we will protect you, don't be afraid.
What is the guardian angel guarding us from? Why is that guardian angel protecting us? And is there more than one? Short answer to that is absolutely yes. He's guarding us from what? The fallen angels.
Judeo-Christian and Islamic tradition, there's an idea that there will be some kind of final warfare when God defeats Satan once and for all. That's been interpreted by some people to say that the aliens will come back, they'll fight it out again one final time.
Both the Book of Enoch and the New Testament book of Revelation refers to a final cosmic battle of good versus evil. Other biblical stories include accounts of angels wielding extraordinary powers. Angels who are not just guardians, but who intervene in human affairs. But who are these celestial warriors? The New Testament Acts of the Apostles tells the story of St. Peter, who was imprisoned in Jerusalem by King Herod in 44 AD.
Peter is asleep between two soldiers, so the angel walks through the wall. He says his name because he touches Peter, tells Peter to wake up and come with me. He unshackles Peter, and he says to Peter, "Follow me." The prison cell opens, Peter walks out, and the first thing he notices, all the guards are asleep. They get out to the courtyard. This huge prison gate opens by itself, and Peter walks out. He's free. Angel walks a little bit longer. It's gone.
Is the freeing of St. Peter an alien encounter story? Or is it a true story of heavenly angels commanding otherworldly powers?
A lot of the times, modern contactees say, well, these beings have come to me in my dreams. They can come through my walls, all my doors are locked, my windows are shut, and all of a sudden I open my eyes and there is a being there.
Some might say these accounts of visitations by angels are a result of imagination or projection, but I take them as actual historical accounts because they're presented that way.
We look at the case of religion, we can see clear evidence of extraterrestrial human visitors who have come here and have tried to help improve conditions in our civilization. And they have been consistently trying to help the Earth along, which may in fact be leading up to a galactic family reunion, where after a certain point, when we're ready, they no longer have to follow the prime directive, if you will, and can again show themselves to us.
But whether angels are, in fact, supernatural or extraterrestrial beings, artists have nearly always depicted them as having large, almost bird-like wings. But where does this notion come from? From ancient texts? Or from a more mysterious source? A source not from the heavens, but from places thousands of light years away. Rome, Italy. Stored in the treasury of St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican is the sarcophagus of Junius Massus. Constructed in 359 AD, the sarcophagus features what some believe to be the earliest known depiction of winged angels in all of Christianity. In the centuries that followed, angels were almost always depicted as having wings. But why? Especially since the actual biblical texts rarely describe angels as having bird-like appendages.
The vast majority of the stories in the Old Testament, the angels aren't described as having wings at all. Some of them, they look human. When the angel comes to visit Abraham, this angel does not have wings. He looks like a man. Abraham bows to him, which is interesting. How did Abraham know? If he looks like a human being, what was it that gave Abraham the clue to run over and bow down to him? And so there's a supernatural quality, there's a superhuman quality that they acknowledge, that this was a person who was a little more than human.
The concept of an angel, as such, comes directly out of the Greco-Roman tradition. Stories of Hermes and Iris kind of coming down and giving messages. Envisioning them as beings, like human beings, kind of looking like human beings, and being benevolent. There are plenty of other beings which have these beautiful wings, these kind of forms and shapes, but all of these beings, however they're conceived of, are a way of telling us that we have a hard time understanding what it is that separates us from them, from the gods. They have to be these kind of weird beings who have wings.
Angels show up in various cultures as probably misidentified technology. If they saw someone, a human being or a humanoid, flying in the skies, they could only give it a natural review, giving it wings. I don't think they actually had wings. It was ancient man's way of saying they had the power of flight.
The angels that have wings that we're used to seeing depicted in pictures of the Bible and what have you, basically, the wings say these beings can fly. So, we believe in angels. And the Native Americans talk about the star people. The Egyptians talk about the gods coming to and from the earth. So I believe this is the basis, this is the template for the civilizations of the earth's religious practices. I believe that.
For centuries, religious tradition has perpetuated the notion of bird-like wings to explain an angel's mode of travel. But is such a concept even scientifically plausible? In 2009, a study at University College London compared classic depictions of winged angels with actual bird physiology.
You have to be able to flap down and flap up. And you really need a separate muscle to do each of these. On the way down, you're generating the lift. And you actually have to rotate the wings slightly and get a different angle as you come up. And then they actually generate their thrust. Otherwise, if you just went up and down in the same straight pattern, you'd be making lift one way, but when you went back the other way, you'd just push yourself back down. So when you look at the classic pictures of angels, the wings are centered on their back, very close together. Whereas the birds with the wings on the side can have longer muscles with great strength that go into moving them up and down. With the wings on the back, they're going to look like they're going to flap more like this than up and down.
Researchers also concluded that angels, given their humanoid interpretation, would be simply too heavy for flight.
We're not designed aerodynamically, and we're quite heavy. We're solid bone, solid muscle. So those two features you have to overcome.
But if angels could not have possessed actual wings, how would they have managed to travel to and from the heavens? Angels were never described to fly around like Superman, but they sort of had a vertical ascent into the sky, or when they descended, it was a vertical descent. How was that possible? In 1953, Bell Aerosystems developed the rocket belt, the precursor to today's workable jetpack. Designed to lift individuals vertically into the air and glide them across the skies, today's jetpacks can reach altitudes of over 8,000 feet and travel at speeds of up to 60 miles per hour. If you look at a modern jetpack, humans are ascending and descending in a vertical position. Now imagine if that picture was shown to our ancestors, how would they react? Obviously, they will say, this creature must be divine. This creature must be some type of a god, because they've got the capability of flight. They're like birds.
Not even the sky is the limit to them.
But could a device similar to modern-day jetpacks really explain how biblical angels were capable of ascending bodily into the heavens? Could they have had other methods of flight unfamiliar to our ancient ancestors?
Ezekiel talks about a flying chariot. Ancient Hebrews talk about the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. So clearly these are physical machines that the angels are using. The story of Jacob and the angel in Genesis 28 is a classic UFO scenario. Jacob falls asleep, and in this dream, he dreams that there's angels going up and down a ladder, and this ladder comes from heaven.
If you look at, let's say, a spaceship and it opens its door and there's a ramp coming out, I mean, that almost looks like a ladder. So it is possible that what is described there is nothing else but a technological event that was described as a ladder.
Did our ancestors try to explain an ancient alien technology by suggesting that extraterrestrial visitors were heavenly visitors with bird-like wings? If the answer is yes, the implications are both profound and potentially disturbing. For if angels are actual visitors from other worlds, then what is their mission? Are they simply watching us? Or is there, perhaps, a more sinister purpose? Temple Mount, Old City, Jerusalem. It was here that many biblical stories reportedly occurred, including the binding of Isaac from Genesis 22. In the story, God asks Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac on Mount Moriah. Abraham sets out to obey God's command, but after binding his son and preparing for the sacrifice, he is stopped at the last minute by an angel. Conventional interpretations of the story usually conclude that God only wanted to test Abraham's faith. But ancient astronaut theorists suggest that the tale has another interpretation.
In my opinion, God would never ask such a question. So, is it possible that it was a fallen angel / alien extraterrestrial who posed as God?
God never demands human sacrifice. Human sacrifice is totally anathema to Christianity, and it's totally anathema to God as a creator.
The French philosopher Sartre very famously wrote, "If an angel were to tell me I needed to sacrifice my son, I'd ask for some ID." Maybe somebody else impersonating a god, and we would then have somebody stepping in to actually prevent this from happening. Are we in fact maybe confronted with two warring civilizations trying to control what is happening in the stories of the Bible?
Just like there are good people and bad people here on Earth, there's good and bad extraterrestrials out there. Good and evil permeates the entire universe. Yin and yang, there's a balance.
Deep inside the Middle Eastern country of Oman, a mysterious cavern lies hidden far beneath the surface. Called Marvelous Al-Jinn, or meeting place of the Jinn. It stretches more than 14 acres underground, and is one of the world's 10 largest caves. Many Omanis still believe this cavern, and others like it, are actually inhabited by supernatural creatures of Islamic folklore, called jinn, or genies, mystical creatures that are usually invisible to man.
One interesting aspect of the jinns is an element of free will. They're like angels, but we think of angels in the West as under the direct command of the divine powers. But the jinn can make some decisions for themselves, and some of them are a little contrary or curious in their way of being.
According to Islamic theology, genies often reveal themselves to humans with messages, which can be either benevolent or deceptive. But is it possible that genies actually exist? If so, where did they come from?
When we talk about genie in a bottle, it's very interesting because you rub the bottle and then the genie comes out of it and it fulfills your wishes. Well, let's look at this from a modern day perspective. If you have a little container and you push a button and a hologram comes out, then could that be a genie in a bottle? And according to the ancient astronaut theory, that is exactly what happened, where extraterrestrials used holograms in order to relay messages. That is essentially a genie in a bottle.
Like angels, jinn are said to be able to appear and disappear at will, and are sometimes only heard as disembodied voices. But while some ancient astronaut theorists believe this behavior resembles that of extraterrestrials, others claim that angels, jinn, and other supernatural creatures have origins right here on Earth. They call these beings ultra-terrestrial.
Ultra-terrestrials are possible beings that travel and visit us from other dimensions. We know that we all vibrate in the three-dimensional space at a certain frequency. It's very possible that other beings vibrate at a higher frequency and are able to pass more easily into other dimensions.
The ultra-terrestrial theory would also explain the folkloric creatures, the angelic creatures, any sort of experience of a strange, supernatural, or alien being that's occurred throughout history.
But could so-called fallen angels, jinn, and other mysterious ultra-terrestrial creatures really help to explain more recent stories of people who claim they are directed toward violent ends by the will of God? David Berkowitz, better known as Son of Sam, claimed a demon who took possession of his neighbor's dog commanded him to kill. Herbert Mullen, who committed 13 murders in California in the early 1970s, claimed voices in his head told him he had to make human sacrifices to prevent a cataclysmic earthquake. Marshall Applewhite, the leader of the UFO cult known as Heaven's Gate, inspired a mass suicide based on a vision that led him to believe it was related to Jesus.
Ancient literature is full of characters who are claiming that they have been influenced by gods, angels, extraterrestrial beings, right? Which is rather like when Charles Manson or the Son of Sam claims, say, metaphysical reasons or theological reasons for what they're doing now. So it's not a matter of whether we believe them or not. Right? They very much believe it, and that's what's important. What matters is that from the ancient world to the modern, there are mysterious forces. Whether they are fictions or not, we don't have the ultimate answers. What matters is the similarity, and those discourses are, to a certain extent, transhistorical.
Angels and demons, good versus evil. But if, as many ancient astronaut proponents maintain, extraterrestrials have been masquerading as angels, jinn, and otherworldly creatures for thousands of years, where did they come from? Why are they here? And could they be all around us in plain sight? Mount Hermon, high above the Holy Land. At 9,230 feet, this mysterious mountain straddles the borders of Lebanon, Syria, and Israel. Sitting above the Golan Heights, Mount Hermon has been contested ground among Christian, Hebrew, and Islamic faithful for thousands of years. According to the Synoptic Gospels, Mount Hermon is the location of the transfiguration of Jesus, an event in which Jesus was transformed into a radiant, altered state, and was seen to be conversing with Moses and the prophet Elijah. Mount Hermon is also the site where the 200 fallen angels descended to earth in the book of Enoch. But why Mount Hermon? Is there a geological significance to that site?
All across the face of the earth there are particular hotspots. And it could well be that the reason the Middle East is such a hotspot, and the reason there are legends of the Middle East being stark and forest of other universes. One theory says that we were populated from the stars in the Middle East at the beginning of what we call our own time.
In the occult science of numerology, the number 33 represents the ultimate attainment of consciousness. Mount Hermon is located at the 33rd parallel north, which is a latitude 33 degrees north of the Earth's equator. Tracing the 33rd parallel to the exact opposite side of the globe directly points to the site of the most famous alleged UFO encounter in modern history, in Roswell, New Mexico.
If you take the geographic polar opposite from Mount Hermon, you wind up in Roswell, New Mexico. Now that's not an accident, folks. It's not an accident. Fallen angels are very big on where they show up, what they do, how they do it. That should send shivers up and down your spine.
But could the global coordinates of the Roswell crash site and those of Mount Hermon have a special, perhaps secret significance?
If aliens use the 33rd latitudinal line as a waypoint, as a landing point for planet Earth, what biblical people saw thousands and thousands of years ago on Mount Hermon were entities that came down from the sky. They called them angels. We call them extraterrestrials.
My idea is these extraterrestrials, they landed at different points. Why? They knew that thousands of years in the far future, the humans would know the geometry of their land. And all of a sudden they say, hey, what's that? These are places linked together. It's not coincidence. It was on purpose.
Could the angels that descended on Mount Hermon thousands of years ago, and the aliens who were reportedly seen over Roswell, New Mexico in 1947, belong to the same extraterrestrial race? And if so, does this mean that angels or aliens have been among us all along? Were they left behind to monitor us? Or perhaps even guide us into the future?
Probably the last time that we had any regular interaction with these ETs at a cultural level was during the time of the foundation of Islam. For whatever reason, these guys seem to have followed a mutual collective agreement that they'd withdraw from the earth after the time of Islam and the New Testament, the Bible, etc., etc. Stay away. But in the meantime, we can develop technology, we get all proud of ourselves and think, oh, we're the only game in town here. Wake up! They're all over the place. Look at the angels in the Bible. These are documented records. The people that wrote these books didn't think they were myths. They didn't think they were fake. They were writing down history.
The extraterrestrials want that in the far future of mankind, we start to see these things. We start to translate these books. We start to realize that something on Earth in geometry is wrong. And now we start to ask questions. We start to ask, for example, how can we explain that? Have we maybe been visited by extraterrestrials? And I think it's important to think in this way, because these extraterrestrials have promised to return. And one day they will return.
If we humans are now on, we'll say, the cusp of finally having some truth laid out to us about our relationship to other intelligences in the universe, I just hope that we will be looking at aliens past, present, and future as not our killers and not our saviors, but as another intelligence that we will be able to shake hands with and learn something about the cosmos.
What if, and perhaps when, so-called angels reveal themselves to us in the form of extraterrestrials? Would we accept them? Perhaps only when we are ready to know the truth about our own origins. Will that day come? Ancient stone fingers reaching for the sky and stretching out over several miles.
People were basically one step removed from cavemen. We're pouring these giant stones, some of them weighing 100, 200 tons, even up to 350 tons.
A complex of stone structures dating back more than 10,000 years.
It just stands there asking us to go figure, how was this done? What's the background to this?
Were they meant to be seen by people in the sky? Who could have been flying at that time other than extraterrestrials?
And the remains of an Incan temple reported to have otherworldly origins.
They wondered that in the far future, the question comes up, have you been visited by outer space?
Millions of people around the world believe we have been visited in the past by extraterrestrial beings. What if it were true? Did ancient aliens really help to shape our history? And if so, is there an extraterrestrial explanation for the Earth's most mysterious and unexplained structures? Located more than 500 miles away from the crowded streets of Istanbul, Şanlıurfa, in southeastern Turkey. There, in 1994, on a dusty hilltop, a local shepherd noticed the tip of a stone sticking out of his field. He began to dig, eventually unearthing a 19-foot pillar. Its edges were precise, and rising from its center was a relief carving of a strange animal. Upon closer examination, it appeared that the finely chiseled stone had been fashioned by talented stonemasons, working with advanced tools. When word of the discovery reached the scientific community, one fact became obvious. A Kurdish shepherd had stumbled upon what is perhaps the most astonishing archaeological discovery in modern times, a site known as Göbekli Tepe.
For 13 years, the German archaeology team has been meticulously going into a hill, and they have been doing carbon dating as deep as they go. It has taken them 13 years to uncover only 5% of a gigantic civilization. They know what's under the ground. Circles upon circles upon circles, perfect circles in stone. And rising up out of those stone circles are huge sculpted columns, 19 feet high, 15 tons per column.
Test results have supported the idea that Göbekli Tepe is nearly 12,000 years old, almost 7,000 years older than Mesopotamia's Fertile Crescent, long heralded as the cradle of civilization.
In Göbekli Tepe, the oldest advanced site now on our planet. We know of no other site that is this advanced. It is now double the history of humanity.
And right there is this gigantic site with huge megalithic circular structures. It just stands there, a mystery, asking us to go figure, how was this done? What's the background to this? We don't know who made them. They just come out of the darkness of the last ice age where we know nothing and enter the stage of history already fully formed. And to my mind, this is indicative of a major forgotten episode in human history.
Could the discovery of Göbekli Tepe radically change our understanding of human history? And an ancient civilization provide evidence that mankind's myths might actually be based in fact?
A lot of myths, a lot of legends suggest that there were past civilizations of astounding sophistication at incredibly early periods. I think we have little glimmers, little suggestions around the world that there was something going on much higher, much more sophisticated, at a much earlier period of time.
To put things into perspective, Göbekli Tepe is 12,000 years old. That is several thousand years earlier in the age of Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid. And indeed, according to biblical tradition, the world really began in 4000 BC, and yet that is 8,000 years later than the foundation of Göbekli Tepe. So clearly we have here something that contradicts our normal understanding of the evolution of civilization.
Curiously, after 13 years of digging, archaeologists investigating the ancient site have failed to recover a single stone-cutting tool, nor have they found any agricultural implements.
How in the world can you contemplate 19-foot tall, perfectly sculpted columns that are 11 to 12,000 years old and no tools?
The mystery of Göbekli Tepe is further compounded by the ancient stone carvings found throughout the site. They depict creatures like wild boars and geese.
We see various types of creatures, different animals, birds, insects, and even abstract human forms that seem to come together to create this very weird menagerie, which has totally baffled the archaeologists who have uncovered this site. Now, what they represent is a matter of speculation, but it's my intuition that they may even represent a stone.
Located less than 350 miles from Mount Ararat, the site many biblical scholars believe to be the resting place of Noah's Ark, the animal carvings of Göbekli Tepe suggest a time in the region's history when the indigenous animal population may have been of a totally different origin. But do these carvings actually provide historical proof of the Great Flood that was described in the Bible?
Archaeologists are aware that there are more than 2,000 myths of the Great Flood, which destroyed an earlier civilization.
Some researchers theorize that the events of a cataclysmic flood and a story similar to that told of Noah's Ark was recorded on the stone pillars of Göbekli Tepe. If true, that would push the date of the Great Flood back to the end of the last ice age, far earlier than the biblical period.
There is evidence that this may have ended
quite catastrophically. There was a lot of things happening, a lot of migrations, possibly waters rising up very quickly, a lot of rapid changes in lifestyles.
But another, perhaps even more profound question remains. Who built Göbekli Tepe? For what purpose? And how did such an ancient site remain in nearly pristine condition for more than 10,000 years?
In the case of Göbekli Tepe, we find that the site was carefully placed underneath sand. This site was buried. It appears as if somehow the usage of Göbekli Tepe was no longer there, and that people moved on, but had such a reverence to this important site that rather than destroy it, they put it to peace by burying it.
But why would the area's inhabitants carefully bury their monuments under 20 feet of sand? Is it possible that Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried in order to protect it from invaders? Or might the intention have been to preserve it in hope someday to return?
You have to ask yourself, why is someone building these massive structures all over the world? And many of them are very similar. It leads us to think that there is some connection between all these ancient sites. That the builders were all doing it for a similar purpose. I do see a similarity across the globe from megalithic sites where these past cultures explain that they were built by the gods. But were they really gods? Or could they have been extraterrestrials?
Perhaps the answers can be found by examining another ancient site, one located half a world away, in the mountains of Peru. Peru, home of the world's longest mountain range, the Andes, the spine of South America. Here, in a high river valley, among peaks towering over 20,000 feet, the Inca established their capital city of Cusco, which thrived for over 300 years, until Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century. Above Cusco, at an elevation of more than 12,000 feet, looms the ancient fortress of Sacsayhuaman, whose immense stone walls may hold secrets which predate the Inca themselves.
My feeling, very strong feeling, is that we're looking at a two-phase construction site in many of the so-called Inca stone monuments. And the Inca structures sit on top of much more ancient rock cut structures, megalithic structures that we just don't know who built them. And this actually fits with the Inca's own view.
Like many Inca sites, Sacsayhuaman features astonishing stonework, but not all of it credited to the Inca. According to conventional archaeology, the Gilgay culture built the older sections of the site approximately 1,000 years ago. But the Inca themselves believed the site was constructed by an earlier unnamed race of people, led by a powerful god who descended from the skies.
Throughout time, there has been witness to a god named Viracocha that visited the South American people and blessed them and gave them all types of technology, and some of his physical characteristics make him stand out from the indigenous population because he was a very tall, pale-skinned, white-haired being.
But did this god Viracocha actually exist? Could he have been, as ancient astronaut theorists suggest, a visitor from an alien world? If so, it might help to explain just how the ancient site was constructed.
This rock weighs about 20 tons. This is minuscule compared to many of the rocks at Sacsayhuaman. Today we have heavy machinery to move such stones, but in the ancient times, especially the Inca, they would have used massive human workforces working for massive amounts of time.
A rule of thumb is it takes about 10 to 20 men to move a 1-ton rock. So when you're talking hundreds of tons, you're talking thousands of men.
What we see is a culture who have got the technology to quarry giant blocks of stone, move to the site where they want to build, and then to stack and cut and articulate these massive blocks into, in some cases, almost indestructible structure.
Talking about ramps, we're talking about a composition of feldspar, mica, and quartz. So you need diamond to actually braid it or cut it. We would use diamond today to cut granite. Those are the kind of discoveries that we want to question whether they were really using the tools in the ancient toolbox or whether there was something else at work.
Shaman Jorge Delgado has spent most of his life studying the mysterious structures of Peru, many built prior to the rise of the Inca Empire.
It's amazing, all the weight of the stones. It's difficult, definitely, for any human to move, even in groups. And the other aspect is how it's put together. In some stones, we will see still now there is like some marks that it seems that it was dissolved.
The walls are put together with blocks of stone weighing 50 or 100 tons, cut and shaped like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle so that they lock together so tightly that you can't even get a sheet of paper between them.
There are signs in many of these stones that show very large amounts of thermal heat have been applied to mold the stones in such a way that they fit perfectly. And so it really does raise a lot of questions.
If you look at the style the Sacsayhuaman wall was built, the blocks look as if they've been molded like putty. If you can mold stone into place, then all of a sudden, as crazy as this sounds, it makes more sense because there is no mortar that has been used.
According to local legend, a bird was responsible for the seamless construction. Legends say the winged creature carried a powerful chemical in its beak, a substance capable of melting stone.
Sacsayhuaman means the head of the falcon. Falcon's head. But maybe it wasn't falcons, or maybe some bird people who could connect with the place.
But is it possible, as ancient astronaut theorists suggest, that the mythical bird might actually have been a spacecraft, piloted by alien visitors known to the locals as Space Brothers?
I believe that it's a combination of the Space Brothers, the technology, with other kind of possibilities. Nowadays we know, different kind of tools. We didn't have before this kind of tools. Maybe we had more sophisticated. So the thing is that this place, Sacsayhuaman, it continues as a mystery.
So looking at all these sites with these perfectly stacked stones, we're looking at a type of technology that's not used anywhere else on Earth. I don't discount human ingenuity, but that type of engineering that we still can't duplicate today must raise a flag for further consideration. It's almost extraterrestrial in a sense. Someone had to have taught them these techniques.
But whether the process of forming the large megalithic stones involved the use of thermal energy or a mysterious chemical, one thing is certain. The ancient builders used the technique on a vast scale. But why? What was the intended purpose of creating such intricately built stone structures?
So we can't really give an answer as to what they were being used for, other than we know that the extraterrestrials more than likely are the source of what they call gods,
How did they get here? More than likely in some type of craft. And very possibly they could have been using these large megaliths as platforms to land on.
But if Sacsayhuaman was in fact constructed by alien visitors, might there be additional evidence of their time on Earth at other ancient sites around the world? Perhaps there is. And the path to that evidence is clearly marked in stones. Sites on Earth are as majestic or as treacherous as the jagged region of Brittany located on the northwest coastline of France. Here can be found the legendary Karnak stones, a collection of over 3,000 massive rocks, arranged in rows and other shapes, and spreading across more than 2 miles of French countryside.
You're talking thousands of stones that are lined in straight rows, lined in circles, lined in squares and rectangles. Why are people doing this? Why are they putting so much time and energy into something? And the short answer, I believe, is that we really don't know.
According to local legend, the megaliths were originally invading Roman soldiers, turned to stone by Merlin the magician. But if it wasn't magic that created this forest of stones, who or what did?
Modern archaeologists would say that people who were one step removed from cavemen were quarrying these giant stones, some of them weighing 100, 200 tons, even up to 350 tons, and then somehow moving them into place. When you first look at the stones here at Karnak, they seem to be in haphazard shapes. But on closer examination, you can see that most of the stones have been cut on one side or another. In fact, these granite megaliths are magnetized with the earth, and nearly all of them come to a point.
Stone magnets? Is it possible that these stones were really cut and positioned in such a way as to create some sort of geomagnetic field? But why?
Karnak as a place is highly charged with energy. As you walk down these stone corridors, you can feel this charge. Many tourists who come here also like to touch the stones and feel the energy coming off of them. And the people who built Karnak must have been highly knowledgeable of the Earth's energy fields.
According to a concept known as the world grid theory, certain places on our planet contain higher magnetic forces than others.
An interesting coincidence with all the megalithic structures we have around the Earth is that they're placed at specific points that can be harnessing an ancient world energy grid.
There are certain spots around the world which have traditionally been sacred, hallowed, vortexes, energy feels different there. The ancient stone monuments were built to harness that force and that potential to create a funnel-like vortex.
We look at things like the Giza pyramids or Machu Picchu or Baalbek in Lebanon. All of these are placed in specific geocoded locations which relate to this world energy grid.
Could Karnak be one of these locations? And might the combination of geomagnetic properties and the unique shapes of the stones themselves have allowed ancient builders to actually manipulate gravity? If so, where did this knowledge come from? And what ultimate purpose did it serve?
It wasn't until we were able to see these stones from above in a helicopter that we realized that Karnak was meant to be seen from the sky above us.
And that is one of only 3 things you can see from outer space: Nazca, the Great Wall of China, and Karnak.
and to be seen by people in the sky who could have been flying at that time other than extraterrestrials.
At one end of the Karnak alignment, aerial researchers identified a stone circle, similar to the one found at Stonehenge. At the other end, investigators on the ground discovered a rectangle of stones, one that had been buried for centuries. Both groupings appeared precisely placed to predict both the summer and the winter solstice.